She looked around, vaguely recalling that a company of soldiers had sought refuge on the blasted summit. Then something had hit her, taking all she had left to resist it. Now, nothing was left of the company but their armor. Always an even trade, sorceress. She fought against a sob, then swung her attention to the first hill. Tayshrin was down, but alive. A half-dozen Marines scampered up the hillside to gather around the High Mage. A minute later, they carried him away. Belladin, most of his clothing burned away and his flesh scorched red, remained on the center hill, collecting Nightchill's scattered limbs and raising his voice in a mournful wail. The sight, in all its horror and pathos, struck Tattersail's heart like a hammer on an anvil. Quickly she turned away. Damn you, Tayshrin. Pale had fallen. The price was one armed host and 4 mages. Only now were the Black Moranth legions moving in. Tattersail's jaw clenched, her lips drawing from their fullness into a thin white line. Something tugged at her memory, and she felt a growing certainty that the scene was not yet played out. The sorceress waited. Excerpt from Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, Volume 1 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Hello, and welcome to this latest episode of I Am the Party, and I am Paul. Glad to have you back. I am really excited to play today. Actually, I've been thinking about the game all week, and it's fun because I really try to limit myself to the actual story when I'm just recording. So it's like these little tiny bite-sized moments of play. And as a result, it gets me really amped to spend some time on this story. And I was driving yesterday, one town to the next, and playing out a little scene in my head to kind of flesh out our 4 squad members. So I am stoked to give some dialogue a try today. We'll see how that goes. For some reason, that fills me with a little bit of anxiety, but I kind of have the scene structured in my head already, and I just kind of want to play out the characters as their personalities kind of are starting to come out in my head, and obviously continue in the dungeon, the Rift of Seeping Night. Before I do that, however, I do want to call in to spotlight 2 podcasts that I started listening to, both by the same creator. And I've only actually listened to to one of each of the episodes so far, but the Solo Role Players podcast, which started back in August of 2024. I'm a big fan of that just off of one episode. PJ is the creator of that, and he recommended me to listen to his stuff too, based off of my interest in Geek Gamers. But I just listened to the Man Alone interview episode, which is the first episode in the series. It was great. It got me even more excited to play. So I'm excited to listen to more of that. And then he also has a actual play, a sort of audio drama called A Wasteland Story, a Fallout solo RPG podcast, and it uses the Modifius 2D20 rules and the Mythic GM Emulator 2.2 edition, second edition. I've enjoyed both productions so far, but definitely give those a listen if you want the next better version of what I'm trying to do here. It's a good place to start, a good place to go if you're looking for more solo roleplay content that you can just listen to in the background. Gardens of the Moon, my first reading from the Malazan Book of the Fallen, certainly won't be my last. I chose that particular passage because I think it speaks to wheels within wheels, plots within plots, to steal from Game of Thrones. The first book, well, actually, I'll say the entire 10-book series of the Books of the Fallen is really just mystery within mystery within mystery. I kind of feel like that's a little bit of the feel that I want to get for this game as well, that I've got going here with my stewards and concept of the Greater Eastern Wilds, the Empire that's to the west of the mountains, and the wilderness that's to the east of the mountains. I don't want to just copy it, but I do want to take that influence very heavily into account. And so I'm trying to think of, what's the history of my characters? What's the history of that brought them to this point? I mentioned in one of my first episodes that I have this overall concept that the squad is motivated by a recent loss of a 5th squad member. So we have the 4 squad members, Deadlock, Talls, Sax, and Sarge, but there was a 5th at one point recently, and the squad's still trying to get over that. So had some thoughts on that for today's game. Before I do jump into it, though, as always, you can reach me at iamthepartypodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, suggestions, thoughts, reflections, critiques, suggestions, any of those things, happy to hear them. You can also follow me at iamtheparty.bsky.social on Bluesky. I've really enjoyed spending some more time on there. So if you see me popping around, give me a follow back. I would love to have more people that kind of match what I'm into, that I can then easily access posts and new ideas and things too. Without further ado, so last time when we were playing the Rift of Seeping Night Part 1, we were introduced to this town of Spire, and it's in the mountains. I established that it's in the mountains to the east, and these mountains are the Dagger Spine Mountain Pass. Massive, basically splits the continent in half, and to the west is where our squad of stewards came from, traveled through the mountains, and their first assignment was to help out this city, really small village of sun worshippers, cultists. We were introduced to Solgren, the elder druid, and he didn't give us much information other than just, please help us find our wizard. He's gone missing. So that's where my characters took off, and they ran into the beginning of the dungeon, the temple, and didn't get too far. We find the stewards, the squad, in a room that has 3 pointing statues, and again, they all have some writing on them. One, it says that the light of day shines upon its supplicants. Another one says the light of day shines upon my brother. And the third one says the light of day gives way through the dark of night. Our wizard, Talls, she's the one who is able to read those successfully and to decipher them. However, Sarge, they were in a hurry to go through a door to the north of this room and just smashed it to bits. It wasn't very solid, it turned out. As a result, we have a passageway that's been opened, but the characters are holding it back. And Sarge is actually going to say, whoa. Let's take a breath before we get too far in here. Talls, you took a tumble back there on our way in. How's it going? How you doing? And Talls reaches a delicate hand to her head and very lightly, with just a fingertip, touches a massive goose egg that's been rising ever since she took her fall through this staircase that opened beneath her feet at the entrance to this temple. As she does, and she flinches away from it because it is painful, and it's clear to everyone that she's got a bit of a head injury. Deadlock, our scout, speaks up and says, if Bellerophon were here, we wouldn't have to deal with any of that. Talls, you'd already be healed up. Our squad mage wouldn't have to worry about a head injury. And, I bet you if Bellerophon were here, and Sax speaks over Deadlock, he's not here. What don't you understand about that? We lost him. And the whole party goes silent for a moment. Sax continues, what right do we have doing here anyways? What do we even know about this Balthothume? Why? And Sarge finally, just with the calmness that they bring to the squad, speaks up and says, we don't have much information, and we're not the ones that are deciding on what's right or wrong in this situation. We just we've been given this task to find the wizard, find Balthothume. Evidently he's been an ally of the stewards this side of the Dagger Spine, and we don't have many allies over here. That's enough. Let's get moving. They head off to the north. 3 large stone discs are lying along the floor of this small corridor. Each disc is about 3 feet in diameter, 9 inches thick, and on the upward-facing side of each, a radial line is carved from center to edge. All right, so that's what we have in this space. It does appear to be a pretty narrow hallway with a door that continues on to the north. Looking at it, I think I'm going to have Deadlock, who's my scout, and who was successful figuring out how to get us into the place in the first place. He's gonna scout, take the lead here. He still has a D8 for his scout stat, so I'm gonna roll D8 and a fate die. See what I get here. Okay, I rolled a 7, but I also rolled a negative. So Deadlock is able to decipher some of the basics about these 3 discs that are in this hallway. It looks like they, upon closer inspection, match the same material that the statues are made out of in that first area that we traveled through. They're about 3 feet in diameter, 9 inches thick, And on the upward-facing side of each, a radial line is carved from center to edge. So there's a way to kind of arrange these radial dials so that light can cast a shadow. Let's see. Since we have Deadlock in the lead as scout, I'm going to have him roll to see and examine these. Let's see what he gets. He has a scout D8. You know what? Actually, I'm picturing this as maybe more of a clever roll as he's examining. Scouting would have been maybe if he was just trying to decipher if the entire area was safe, but since he's in the lead and he's trying to be clever, examining these, kind of uses his smarts. Let's see what he gets. All right, I rolled a 3 and a plus. So that is a success, plus some potential positive or bonus. So looking at these discs, Deadlock pull an arrow from his quiver. He has a quiver and a longbow. And he's going to kind of hold up the arrow to the disc, go walk back into the previous room with the 3 statues, hold up the arrow in the gap, the opening that's at the center of each statue, and kind of approximate, okay, wait a minute. Definitely, they're made of the same material. They look like they're the right size. And, I don't know I don't know exactly how these are going to work, but there's three discs, 3 statues. That's a clue. Jinkies. So Deadlock explains this to the rest of the squad. Let's see. I'll have him and Sax. He'll pick up one of them. Sax will pick up the other 2, and they'll just lay them down at the foot of each of the statues. There's no real direction yet on what to do, and honestly, I don't think Deadlock is quite that clever. Talls is still recovering. If it was kind of something Talls might be able to help out with, I would say, let's jump in. Let's have her take a look too. But that gives them some ideas here of maybe a future puzzle or pieces of puzzle that they can continue to put together. So they'll continue north in this main hallway to find another door, and Sarge will delicately turn the knob. I don't know what kind of apparatus it has to open and close the door, but the latch is released. So we're going to open up into the next space. The interior of this strangely shaped room is absolutely glimmering with warm flickering lights glinting off the thousands of orange, red, and gold crystals embedded into the ceiling, floor, and walls of the gallery. Ooh, I'm lucky I don't have a thief character, because they would be just destroying this place, trying to capture all this loot. Along the walls, these meticulously crafted crystalline mosaics depict scenes of great battles between the same 2 armies. You also see 2 more doors, other than the one you just entered through. A large gold full-length mirror, a short alcove in the western wall, and at the end of a dark hallway branching off toward the east lies another large mirror, its obsidian frame nearly invisible in the gloom, save for the wreath of faint pinpricks of light sparkling in the shadows. And it says here, now upon further examination, I'm going to say Sarge is the one who is starting to study these. As Sarge, they have some history of military battles and some knowledge in that direction. Seeing clearly that the mosaics are depicting a series of great battles between forces of day and forces of night, and that's a pretty easy pattern, I would say, for anyone to pick up on. Forces of darkness, forces of light, and they're battling through the eons, each side occasionally looking more triumphant than the other, while the other one then can win the battle at a later date. So it's a very back and forth situation, like a weird art display, some kind of thing that they just stumble upon. Let's see, let's find out if any of these jewels that are in the walls here, if they're worth anything. Deadlock, whose main motivation is power, I'm going to have him again try to do some deciphering here and figure out what's going on. So let's roll his clever again, carefully inspecting, maybe taking, again, an arrow and taking the arrowhead and kind of getting it in between these weird gems and little beads and stuff that are in the wall itself. All right, rolled a 3 and a positive. So he is able to see that some of these jewels are actually worth a good chunk of change. And not that the stewards are all about the money or about getting rich, but they're pretty independent, and they're going to have to make their way through wilderness, through strange villages, and I think it's going to be worthwhile for the party as a whole to keep track of their wealth, just as a general relative resource that they have. Deadlock is taking time trying to decipher, which gems are valuable, what gems can be left. He's actually able to pull off about 100 gold pieces worth of gems, which I'm going to put in his inventory. If he can find a buyer, that's another story, but at least he's got some jingly gems hanging out in a pouch in his rucksack or something. All right, and then that brings us to now What's the rest of the party doing? So there's a couple of different features that can be all inspected, and I imagine that the squad is pretty used to inspecting a space and kind of immediately assessing passageways, routes, safety things, dangerous things. So what do I have here to look at? I have 2 doors other than the one that was to the south of the room that I entered through. One is a large gold full-length mirror in a short alcove in the western wall, and at the end of a dark hallway branching off toward the east so there's actually 2 mirrors and 2 doorways. Ooh, okay, that's a lot of different directions I can go. Looks like I have a mirror of light and a mirror of darkness. And starting with the gold mirror, actually, it appears that Deadlock, in inspecting the room, was able to decipher that is actually worth something as well, but there's nothing really special about it. And it's also probably going to be too large to really remove from the wall and take with them. So he is going to continue to just kind of pick away at gems as he can. And there's a passageway to the east that looks to be pretty much a dead end with the obsidian mirror. Well, my characters aren't afraid of darkness, and this could be a gritty game. I don't think they're really going to inspect that obsidian mirror too closely either, after Deadlock was able to determine that the gold mirror really didn't have much going for it. So that leaves the 2 doors now to the north. One is on the left-hand side facing north, and one is on the right-hand side facing north. The left-hand side one has what appears to be a large 10-foot plank of wood, but that does look movable. Going to have Sarge and Sax start to pull that down as Talls investigates the other doorway, which looks to be locked. There's a key opening, but none of my characters are really lockpickers. As I mentioned, I don't have any thieves, so I really don't have any like roguish characters per se. If I had a sapper in my group or like an engineer, that'd be the person that I would choose to take a look at this lock. But I don't have any keys. I haven't found anything yet. So that leaves the door with the 10-foot plank in front of it, and that is the path of least resistance. So that's the path that I'm going to take. The rules or the scenario doesn't call for even a die roll for this. It's literally just making the decision to move it. So the 2 characters that are working on that are able to do that without too much of a struggle. And then that will open up the next path to the north here. We'll just continue on this northern way and deeper further into the tunnel, or to the temple. In this area, the man-made construction of the hull gives way to a crude corridor bored through damp, solid rock. At the end of this corridor is a cave containing a fetid pool, bubbling with murky green sludge. A bucket bobs about in the ooze attached to a long chain rising up toward the unseen ceiling. Okay, well, there's not much in this space other than a gross pool of water, a bucket, a random bucket. I guess that's pretty much it. So we're gonna walk into this space. Since it's a newly discovered space, I would say that Deadlock is still going to take the lead here. Now we're going to roll Scout once more to see how we do. Okay, a 3 and a positive on Scouting. So luckily for me, and more so for my stewards, they're able to see that there's actually some creatures that are amongst this fetid pool of water. 3 pairs of globular eyes rise up from the depths, and they stare at Deadlock as Deadlock stares back at them and slowly draws an arrow from his quiver. Let's see. They don't look very threatening to start out with, and Sarge is actually going to put a hand on Deadlock's arm to hold him off from firing. And I'm going to have Talls roll Mage to see if she can figure out what's going on here with these creatures or whatever they might be. It's a D4 right now, so we'll see how well she does. I got a 3 and a neutral on my fudge die. With some quick thinking, and evidently through the foggy haze of this goose egg that's risen on her head, Talls is able to determine that if the creatures themselves aren't bothered, they're not going to bother the stewards. That's apparently what she's confident to say, and they will very carefully make their way through this room, careful to step around these little globulars and not bother them at all. I feel like this room smells bad. I was just remembering I should use some more descriptions of spaces, because the scenario obviously only gives you what you need to know to see in the room. But I figure this room seems like it had been blocked off with that big wooden plank intentionally. I don't know if it was Balthothume, not Bartholomew, Balthothume. If he did it himself, or if he had some servants do it, or what, who did it at what point. But evidently this room really doesn't constructed space like the rest of the temple is that I've seen. So as a result, I feel like this is dank, a lot of dripping noises, again, a bad smell, whatever these little globular monster things, the Glurbermerkers is what they're called in this scenario. That is a fantastic name. They are, in fact, poisonous, and I think, Talz would be able to decipher that as well, trying to check out what kind of creatures they are. Yeah, the whole place probably just smells rancid and is not some place where you really want to get in a fight. It's also not a very large space. It's pretty limited in what we're able to see. So we're going to continue on. It looks like looking at the map, there's a rather large hallway passage opening. It's not really a hallway as much as it is like a weird, dank, dark, like cleft in the rock itself. And I feel like we're kind of being plunged into darkness. So as a result, I'm going to have Talz pull out a magical charm, speak some words into, and get a little bit of light on the subject as my source of light. So we're no longer kind of in the realm of built, constructed temple that Balthothume presumably lives and studies in. We're now into some other space that's deeper into the mountainside itself. So it does look like there's a chain as well that can be used to climb into this, and further north on the passageway and further into the temple's depths. And so they're all going to have to do some climbing here. Let's see here. We'll have Sarge take the lead on this one just to keep things even, and we're going to have, careful. Sarge is going to roll a careful roll to kind of set the tone for the rest of the squad to climb up this chain. So let's see what Sarge does. All right, Sarge rolled a 3 and a neutral, just enough to get them up the chain successfully. And as Sarge takes the lead here, there's a sound, and it sounds like this is actually quite a large opening. The path that they're climbing is just, like I said, a bit of a cutout of rock in this much larger cavernous. Seems like the ceiling is somewhere beyond where the light of Talz's charm can reach. There's a bubbling sound, very different from what was in that fetid pool room. It sounds like deep chanting somewhere in the depths of this space off to the left of where they're climbing, but they're going to continue to make their way. And so Talz is going to go next, and Talz is going to attempt to do it quickly, climbing up, feeling very uncomfortable with this space and whatever kind of dark presence is in here that seems to want to swallow up all of the light that tries to enter it. All right, we got a 7 and a negative, and I'll say as Talz quickly climbs up the chain, she does end up putting out her charm, which is not good. That's the negative result added on there. And so the whole area is kind of cast in darkness. Now, Sax and Deadlock are still in the fetid pool area. They're actually just past it because they all very carefully got through there. But now Sax and Deadlock are going to have to climb up in the darkness and try to catch up to Deadlock, and Sax will try to catch up to Talz and Sarge. So Deadlock will go next. Now that it's dark, he's going to try to do this sneakily. Ooh, a 2 and a negative. All right, so his sneaky is now down to a D6 and the negative. So at some point he's able to get up there, but it is slow going, and it is certainly not sneaky whatsoever. It's quite loud, in fact. Without the help of Talz's light charm, he's just scrambling up, and rocks getting loose and falling down behind him down this slight slope, and just kind of, it's going to make it not really a fun time for Sax to bring up the rear. But Sax is used to some trouble as the squad skirmisher. She's used to getting into the nitty gritty. So she's just going to try to climb up quickly, get up the chain, and hopefully avoid the detection of whatever is in the deep wells of this cavern. All right, she is able to overcome it, and she seems to almost push Deadlock up in front of her to get up to the next area. And as soon as they get up there, Talz is working on the light charm again to get it going, and they see a very slight glimmer of this charm, and Sarge gives them the sign to wait, to hold off, and puts a finger up to his lips to be quiet. The squad now stands in a large ovular stone plateau, rising high up from a seemingly bottomless pit below. There's a large well in the center of the plateau with a heavy crank mechanism attached to a chain that disappears down it. East of the well is a sundial and a translucent off-white orb laying on the ground nearby. At the far eastern precipice of the plateau, only about a foot away from the edge, spirals a huge, brilliantly illuminated shaft of water. To the west, there is a thin natural land bridge extending far into the darkness. All right, so we've made it to the plateau of the primordial well, and I think that's where we're going to call it a day. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk again soon.